This newsreel is being brought to you by the Flooring Center in downtown Springfield. You don't have to be Einstein to figure out that the classification for a great history teacher is one that can bring history to life for their students. The Robertson County Historical Society has managed to do just that. Normally this event is hosted right at Elmwood Cemetery on the actual plots that the person they're portraying is buried. Weather brought them indoors. It didn't slow them down a bit. They did a great job. It's always very interesting to see local historical characters come to life, people that actually had an impact on local Robertson County history.
Are you going to announce it? Excuse me, students. Good afternoon. I'm Jane Head, known by my students as Miss Jane and by my family as Dot Dot. But let me begin at the beginning. I was born November 23rd, 1893, the daughter of William Thomas and Nancy Elizabeth Holmes Head. We traced our family line to Caleb Winters Jr., to Caleb Winters, and to Moses Winters. It will not surprise you, therefore, that the family farm was in Coopertown. It came as no surprise, therefore, that I not only graduated from Coopertown High School in 1911, but also the Vanderbilt School of Expression in 1915.
Wherever he was, he wanted that was me. I went to the district school and learned there. If I did my chores, I got out after chores and got into nature and would learn there. So the whole world was my schoolroom when I was coming up.
We're going to have to set the scene for you here first because you're supposed to be at the cemetery. So you people out here, you're headstones. Sorry, but that's what you have to be. At least we have the driveway going through the cemetery, so that works out. I'm John Michael Morris. This is my wife, Barbara. She passed away in 1894. I have kids. There's Annie. There's Jack. Pfizer's over across the street. In fact, I've got 6 of my kids buried here. I've got grandkids buried here. I've got great-grandkids buried here. And I even have a great-great-grandkid buried here. We got 6 generations in this cemetery.
Do you remember the old post office? Anybody here remember the post office before this one? No, because that was in the 1800s. That was built in 1900. But it was located, you remember the Colonial Hotel? Anyone? I know you remember that, because I do. Mr. Will Allen, he ran a racket store. Have you ever heard of a racket store? Well, it was a store that carried everything. There's a lot of rackets in it, I guess. But it was down 5th Avenue here.
Good evening. My name is Mary Frances Solomon Pepper. And I will explain that. I was born on May 28th in 1830. My parents were William and Frances Solomon. My mother, Frances, bore 9 children over a span of 20 years, beginning in 1823. I was the 5th of 9 children. I was born in Gallatin. In 1847, at the age of 17, I married William Wesley Pepper. I was 17 and he was 30. And Mr. Pepper had been widowed. His first wife, Prentice, he had married her in 1840.
Okay, this was the 15th evening at Elmwood we've done, and it started out a little smaller and it's grown a little every year. And basically it was a fundraiser to start with, but also every character that we do is more research, and we know more about the people that lived before us and the
here
people
in the
we
county.
need to remember. Yeah, here in Robertson County. And so we gain on both two things. We gain in monetarily, and then we gain in the history too.
It seems like a pretty unique activity. I'm no expert, but how is it done all across the country, or is this unusual?
It's done. It's done in different ways. They have a large one over in Gallatin where they don't eat. They just invite anybody that.
Well, they do it at a cemetery, is the part I'm referring to.
Right. And yeah, you can do it different ways, and with the food, we're sort of limited number-wise to what we can do, and I think the way they do theirs over there, it's a whole lot longer, and the characters have to keep on, and they do their part 50 or 60 times. We don't have too many people that want to do a part that long, so it works out well for us to do 5 characters and each year and go from there.
Well, you can't get any more visually graphic than having somebody jump out of a grave and tell you who they were.
Well, that's true, yeah. And a lot of times we have family members. We try to get family members to play their ancestors.
That's neat.
And then we have ancestors that come to watch other people play their ancestors.
So, Mrs. Pepper.
Yes, that's correct.
How did you end up becoming Pepper again?
Well, my first husband was William Wesley Pepper, who I married in 1847. He died in 1861, and 10 years later I married his younger brother, Thomas Pepper. So that's how I became Mary Pepper.
And tell me about your husband's relationship with
Andrew Johnson. Yes, my husband and Andrew Johnson were very good friends. As a matter of fact, Governor Johnson spent the night in our home. They were such good friends.
And that home is located?
It was located on what is now North Main Street, down near the old Coca-Cola plant. But they were such good friends that my husband wanted to send him a gift. And his background was in blacksmithing, so he made a set of andirons and a shovel and sent them to His Excellency, the Governor of Tennessee. And Governor Johnson was so taken with the gifts that he wanted to return, and his background was in a tailor shop, so he made a black coat for my husband. Now that coat is now on display at the Tennessee Museum in Nashville, and the andirons are on display in the Johnson family home in Greenville, Tennessee.
And your husband was a judge, though and an attorney. Was he just yes? But he had no formal education.
That is correct. He referred to the anvil and hammer as his alma mater. That is correct. Yes.
Do you know how did he end up in those positions without an education? How that happened?
He credited just the public knowledge and just hard work, and I'm sure he had some law schooling at that time, but it wasn't quite as stringent as it is now. So he was a very smart man.
Well, thanks for joining us today, Reverend. What are your thoughts about the future?
Well, I have to head back to the cemetery tonight, and things are good for me because, of course, I'm in heaven now, and the Reverend in heaven is, that's where you want to be, right?
So, what year were you born?
In 1833.
And you died in
1917.
Wow, so you covered quite a territory. You saw a lot happen.
Oh, yeah. So all the years of the Civil War, a few years before the war, and then everything after that. I saw a lot of improvements and some things that weren't so much improved,
So, Jane, you're clearly not dead right now.
Right, that's clear.
And you originally lived in?
I grew up in Coopertown, but by the time I was 11 or so, my father and mother had built a house next to Austin Bell Funeral Home in Springfield. And so the rest of that time, I lived in Springfield. And I lived there until I grew very, very old and needed some additional care.
You started a church?
The Memorial Boulevard Church of Christ.
Is that what it's called? What was it called then?
Well, I grew up in the Main Street Church of Christ, but at some point I decided that I wanted things to change a bit, and so I helped start a new church, and that's the one on Memorial Boulevard.
What are you most proud of?
That's a very hard decision because I love my family. I loved all of the boys and girls that I taught. I will have to say that they thought that I was mean. If you ask any of them today, they will say she was the meanest person I ever met. But they were starting to school and they needed to know how things worked, and I tried to help them. So my family and my students and of course my church.
So how does it feel to be alive?
I feel great. I used to be a newspaper man here. I was an editor, and I got to write things I wanted to write about and talk about things I wanted to talk about, and it gave me a lot of power in Robertson County to be able to do those kind of things. So
Did you abuse that power?
I don't think I did. I got accused of doing that, but I was very strong in my opinions, and I like to be argumentative a lot of times.
And what are you most proud of in your career?
Probably my church activity. I was involved heavily in my church, a Christian church, and I was deeply involved. I was a choir director there for all my life, and I was Sunday school superintendent, and my parents went there in the Christian church before I went there, and I just really appreciated that in my lifetime. And it helped me during the Philippines when we had the Spanish-American War. We fought in the Philippines, of the faith that I had in the Christian church.
What year were you born?
1872.
And you died in?
Well, it was January 5th. It was very cold that day I was born, 1872.
And you died?
In 1919, July.
And you lived out most of your life in?
Always lived in Springfield. My father always lived in Springfield, in Robertson County. And his father lived here in Robertson County. He came here in the settlement in the late 1700s and early 1800s.
Well, there you have it, Robertson County. If you've never seen this event before and you'd like to see what it looks like at Elmwood, then watch this brief commercial coming up here, and the link will then appear on the screen that will take you to last year's video coverage of the historical characters they did then. This has been Jim Ball reporting for Smoky Barn News in Springfield. When you're going over the vast array of flooring options available today, why not consider a company that's been doing floors since the early 1900s? That's right, I'm talking about the Flooring Center. They're located at 505 Memorial Boulevard in Springfield, and the minute you walk in the door, you'll know things are different. One thing you'll notice right away, whether you're talking to an installer or you're talking to a salesman on the floor, everyone knows a lot about floors at the Flooring Center. So whether it's hardwood or tile, if you're looking for price, quality, and service, then you're looking for the Flooring Center, formerly the Furniture Center. For more great flooring ideas, see a link to their Facebook page below this video.